I checked into the hotel just after 6 p.m. The sky had turned a heavy gray, and a drizzle misted the windshield as I pulled into the lot. I hadn't made a reservation, hadn't told anyone where I was going. It wasn't far from home, only 40 minutes, but it felt like another world. I told my wife it was a last-minute work thing. I didn't even try to make it believable. She just nodded, eyes on her phone, muttering a distracted, okay. I didn't know what I was looking for. Not really. Space, maybe. Quiet. Somewhere I could breathe without the weight of constant silence that had built up between us. We hadn't touched in weeks. Conversations were mechanical. It felt like we were sharing a house with someone we used to know. I wasn't angry, just tired of pretending that the slow erosion of something once beautiful didn't hurt. Inside the hotel lobby, it was warm, the kind of quiet that wraps around you. I liked it instantly. It smelled faintly of cedarwood and fresh linen. I walked to the front desk, and that's when I saw her. She looked up from her computer, and the moment her eyes met mine, she smiled. Checking in, she asked. Her voice had this calm quality, like she'd already decided she liked me. I nodded, handed over my ID without saying much. She glanced at it, then paused, tilting her head. You've been here before? It wasn't a question, not really. More like a statement wrapped in curiosity. I shook my head. First time. She murmured, typing something. You look familiar. I watched her fingers move across the keyboard. Slim, graceful. She didn't wear a name tag. I noticed that, too. The silence stretched a little, not awkward, just loaded. She handed me the keycard and said, Room 214. Second floor, toward the end of the hall. It's quiet there. Thanks. As I turned to leave, she added, Let me know if you need anything. I nodded again, walked toward the elevator. As I pressed the button, I looked back. She was watching me, not in a creepy way. Not flirtatious either. Just familiar. Like she was trying to remember something. The room was clean, functional, beige. A single queen bed, desk, mini fridge, blackout curtains. The kind of room that doesn't ask questions. I dropped my bag on the chair and sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees. My phone buzzed once. A message from my wife. Let me know when you get there. I stared at it, then locked the screen without replying. There was something about the way the woman had looked at me that lingered. It wasn't just interest. It was like recognition. I'd never seen her before in my life. I was sure of it. But that look, that familiarity, it didn't feel fake. I opened the curtains. The view overlooked the parking lot. Raindrops beaded on the glass. I leaned my forehead against it, letting the coolness ground me. I thought about the last time my wife had looked at me like she really saw me. It had been months, years maybe. Somewhere between diapers, deadlines, and dead conversations, we'd stopped being real to each other. I took a shower, let the hot water numb me. When I got out, I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself, noticing the faint lines around my eyes, the weariness in my expression. I didn't feel old, but I felt worn, like I'd been stretched thin by years of trying to hold something together that was quietly falling apart. I lay on the bed, fully dressed, scrolling through nothing on my phone. News. Emails. Junk. The room felt still. Too still. At some point, I realized I was thinking about the woman at the front desk again. Her voice. The way she said my name like it meant something. I got up, walked over to the desk to grab the hotel pamphlet, just to have something in my hands. On the back, there was a list of staff numbers. I saw front desk, extension 0. My finger hovered over the hotel phone, then I pulled it back. What was I doing? I turned on the TV, muted. Just moving pictures. My thoughts circled the drain. Why had she said I looked familiar? Had I been here before? No. I would have remembered. But that smile. The confidence in it. Like she was holding a secret she didn't think I could guess. I realized I didn't want to sleep yet. Not because I wasn't tired, but because I didn't want to feel the stillness closing in again. I slipped on my shoes, grabbed my keycard, and stepped out into the hallway. It was dim, silent. The carpet muffled every step. When I reached the lobby, she was still there, alone behind the desk, typing. She looked up and smiled. Couldn't sleep? I shrugged. Thought I'd grab a coffee or something. Machine's right there, she said, nodding toward a corner. I walked over, got a cup, and returned. She leaned slightly over the desk, like she was waiting. I don't forget faces, she said suddenly. I sipped the coffee. It was bitter, but warm. Is that so? Especially not ones I've waited to see again. I blinked. Waited. She didn't answer immediately. Just looked at me like she was choosing her next words carefully. We've met. Briefly. A long time ago, she said. I wouldn't expect you to remember. You were different then. Her eyes scanned my face like she was reading a page only she understood. I'm sorry, I said. I don't. It's okay, she interrupted. You were drunk. I wasn't. Something about the way she said it made my chest tighten. Where? Friend's party. Downtown. Must have been 6, 7 years ago. You kissed me in the hallway while your friends were laughing in the other room. I think we said maybe 3 words to each other. I searched my memory. There were a dozen parties I barely remembered from that era. My single years. Chaotic, messy, careless. I remember a lot of parties, I said quietly. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. It was nothing to you. It was a Tuesday, but I remembered. I stood there, coffee cooling in my hands, feeling like someone had dropped a stone in a still pond. That ripple of recognition, finally catching up to me. I'm sorry, I said again, and meant it this time. She shrugged. Don't be. You're here now. And with that, she turned back to her computer, typing again like nothing had happened. But something had. I wasn't sure what yet, but I felt it. And I didn't go back to my room for a while. I couldn't sleep. I lay there for over an hour, eyes open in the dark, thoughts running over each other. Her words kept echoing. You were drunk, I wasn't. That confidence. The calmness. I'd kissed her once and forgotten. She'd remembered. Not because of the kiss, but something more. People don't chase ghosts unless they left a mark. The bed felt too big. The sheets too smooth. My wife and I hadn't shared a bed properly in weeks. She preferred the couch now, said she slept better with the TV on. I never argued. Silence was easier than fights that led nowhere. I used to miss her beside me. Lately, I wasn't sure what I missed anymore. I got up without thinking and headed downstairs. It wasn't impulse. It was instinct. Like I needed answers I hadn't formed questions for yet. She was still there, book in her lap. She looked up and smiled, like she knew I'd be back. No surprise, no curiosity. Just quiet expectation. She asked if I wanted tea. I nodded. She led me behind the counter, poured hot water into a cup, handed it to me. Her hands brushed mine, soft, steady. Neither of us mentioned the past. Instead, we stood there, sipping, the silence almost intimate. She started talking. Nothing dramatic, just pieces of her life. Born here, moved to the city, worked a bunch of jobs. Said she liked the quiet of this one. She said she liked watching people come and go. Said people showed their truest selves when they thought no one was paying attention. I asked if I'd shown mine back then. She didn't answer. I told her I was married. She said she knew. I didn't ask how. Maybe she saw the mark that kind of distance leaves on a person. Maybe she guessed. She didn't seem surprised. Didn't even blink. I told her things I hadn't told anyone. About the disconnect. The silence at home. How I felt like a guest in my own life. I didn't cry. I didn't dramatize. I just said it flat. She listened without interrupting, without pity. She didn't offer advice. Just let the words land. Then she started talking. Said she used to believe in big moments. In fate. In magic. Now she just believed in timing. Right people, wrong year. Or the right person who never saw you. She said she stopped waiting to be chosen. Now she just waited to feel something that felt real. Even if it was brief. Her eyes were dark and steady. I couldn't look away. There was nothing overtly sexual. Nothing obvious. But the tension between us shifted. It wasn't in the words. It was in the pauses. The way her voice softened when she said my name. The way her hand lingered on mine, when she refilled my tea. I asked her why she remembered me after all this time. She said I laughed like I didn't know how to be happy. She said I looked like I wanted to be someone else, even back then. I didn't remember that version of me, but she did. And for some reason, that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in a long time. It was almost 2 a.m. We were the only two people awake in the whole building. The air was thick with unspoken things. She leaned against the counter, her hip brushing mine. Close enough to touch. Close enough to fall. I didn't move. Neither did she. We stood like that for a long moment. The heat of her presence pressed against me, gentle but undeniable. My pulse was steady, but something in me was unraveling. It wasn't lust. It was attention. Focus. Someone finally seeing me. Not the version I kept stitched together for everyone else, but the parts one didn't even show myself. She whispered, "You don't have to pretend right now." And in that moment I let go. Not of my marriage. Not of commitment. Just of the numbness. I let her see the cracks. I let her presence fill the spaces I'd been hiding. She touched my arm, lightly, slowly. I looked at her hand, then up at her face. Her eyes didn't ask for anything. They just waited. I leaned in, not with urgency, not with hunger, but with recognition. Like something unfinished had finally found its place. Our lips didn't meet. Not yet. We just breathed the same air, close enough to feel the weight of the moment. My hand found her waist. Hers found mine. The contact sent a jolt through me, not of guilt, but of life. Like a heartbeat I'd forgotten was mine. We stayed like that, breathing, pressed together, saying nothing. Then I pulled back. She didn't follow, didn't push. She smiled. "You're not ready. That's okay." I nodded. I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight. She turned, walked around the counter, picked up her book, and sat down again. I stood there, unsure of what had just happened. It hadn't been a kiss, but it had changed something inside me. I went back to my room, heart racing. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. Not from guilt, but because for the first time in a long time I felt awake. I left my room early, needing air more than sleep. The weight in my chest hadn't lifted, just shifted. There wasn't shame exactly, not yet. Just awareness. I found her in the lounge, off duty, out of uniform. She was sipping coffee, dressed casually, legs crossed, like she belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. She looked up as I approached. No smile this time. Just a nod, like we both knew whatever boundary existed between us had already been crossed in silence. I asked if she wanted to walk. She said yes, without hesitation. We stepped outside into the cool morning, neither of us in a rush. The world moved around us like background noise. I asked her again why she'd remembered me. Not just the memory, but enough to recognize me, to say those things. She hesitated. Then she told me the truth. She'd looked me up after that night years ago. Said my name had come up in a conversation with mutual acquaintances, and she'd quietly followed breadcrumbs. She found out I'd gotten married a year later. She let it go. Then last month, she saw my name in the system, tied to a canceled reservation at another hotel she'd worked at part-time. That's when she transferred here. She didn't say it to sound dramatic or obsessive. She said it like she was reciting facts. Calm. Matter of fact. I stopped walking. Looked at her. "You came here for me?" She met my eyes without blinking. "Not for you. For the possibility of being seen again." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to call it irrational, even dangerous. But mostly I felt wanted, not in a desperate way. Not lust. Not flattery. Just a pure, rare kind of want. The kind that shows up even when it has no promise of anything in return. She said I hadn't changed much. Still guarded. Still searching. She said she'd always wondered what it would have been like if I hadn't walked away that night. I told her I didn't even remember walking away. She smiled softly and said that sounded about right. We stopped at a bench. Sat in silence for a while. The city murmured quietly around us. I could feel her beside me. Not touching, just there. Solid. Real. She asked me if I was happy. I didn't answer. Because happiness wasn't the right measure anymore. It wasn't about joy or sadness. It was about presence. About whether I even felt like a person in my own life. Most days, I didn't. Most days, I felt like I was reading a script someone else wrote. She said she wasn't asking for anything. Not a future. Not even a second night. She just wanted me to tell her the truth for once. I looked at her. I saw her clearly for the first time. Not as a stranger. Not even as someone from the past. But as a mirror I hadn't been willing to face. She saw the parts of me I'd kept buried. Restlessness, fear, hunger, loneliness. And she didn't flinch. I told her I felt invisible in my marriage. Like I'd been on mute for years. Like if I disappeared, nothing in our life would shift. The schedules would stay the same. The dishes would still get done. The world would just keep moving. She listened like that mattered. She leaned in, slowly, deliberately, and kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't explosive. It was deep and grounding. Her hand moved to my chest, and mine to her waist. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. I let the moment pull me under. It wasn't sex that followed. It was surrender. To presence. To vulnerability. To feeling like someone saw the real, raw edges of me and didn't recoil. Afterward, we lay still, breathing in the aftermath. She didn't speak. She didn't ask questions. Her head rested against me like it belonged there. My phone vibrated once. I didn't check it. Eventually, she sat up, smoothed her hair, looked at me, serious now. This doesn't fix anything, she said. I nodded. I know. But you needed it, she added. So did I. We didn't talk about what came next. There was no plan, no promises. Just understanding. She stood, pulled on her jacket, and looked at me one last time like she was memorizing something private. Then she left. I sat there longer. Let the weight of it all settle into my bones. I knew I'd crossed a line. One I couldn't uncross. But it didn't feel like betrayal in the way I'd imagined it might. It felt like a crack in the armor. A moment of clarity, born from mess. Back at the hotel, I took the stairs. The lobby was empty. Her shift was over. The desk was clean, silent. My reflection caught in the window as I passed. Older, more tired, somehow more honest. I went to my room and closed the door behind me. I didn't shower. I didn't think. I sat on the bed and stared at my phone. 3 missed calls. 1 message. Are you okay? You haven't texted. I didn't reply. Not yet. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then placed the phone face down. I didn't know what kind of man I was becoming. But for the first time in years, I knew what I felt. And I wasn't ready to lie about it. I checked out just after noon. She wasn't at the desk. Some younger guy was there, distracted and half engaged. He didn't look up until I handed over the keycard. No parting words, no lingering glances, just a quiet transaction and the hum of a printer spitting out my receipt. I walked out with a bag over my shoulder and a weight in my chest that didn't feel like guilt, it felt like recognition. Something had happened. It wasn't an accident, and it wasn't meaningless. The drive home felt shorter than it should have. Familiar streets rolled past like they were accusing me of something. The moment I pulled into the driveway, everything felt too still. Her car was there, curtains drawn. The same quiet, colorless life waiting for me inside. I sat for a few minutes before getting out, letting the engine tick as it cooled down. I didn't know how to carry what I felt into a house that hadn't felt like home in a long time. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, barefoot, arms crossed, leaning against the counter. The same posture she always had when she was waiting for something but didn't want to ask for it. I placed my bag down by the door and nodded. You didn't call, she said. I know. She didn't push. Just stood there like she was measuring the weight of everything I wasn't saying. I walked to the fridge, opened it, stared at nothing, closed it again. I just needed to be somewhere else, I said finally. She looked down at her feet. Did it help? No, I said. Yes. I don't know. I sat at the kitchen table. She didn't move. I told her the truth, piece by piece. Not everything, just enough. That I hadn't gone for work. That I hadn't known what I was looking for. That someone there had made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't tell her about the kiss, about the connection, about the night I shared with a stranger who somehow knew me better than the woman I shared a life with. But I didn't lie either. Not really. She didn't ask for details. Maybe she didn't want to hear them. Maybe she already knew. I didn't cheat, I said quietly, and even as I said it, I wasn't sure if that was true. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she pulled out a chair and sat across from me. "I've felt it too," she said. The distance. The silence. I just didn't know how to fix it. I didn't either. She folded her hands on the table. "So, what do we do now?" I didn't have an answer. Not a real one. "I don't want to pretend anymore," I said. She nodded. "Then don't." The space between us wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was just filled with years of things we hadn't said. Love that had gone unsaid for so long it calcified into routine. We used to laugh. We used to make plans. Now, we survived each day, like coworkers on autopilot. I had stopped fighting for us long before I'd stepped into that hotel. I just didn't have the honesty to admit it. She stood up, walked to the sink, rinsed a glass. The sound of water was louder than anything else in the house. "You want to try?" she asked, back still turned. I didn't answer right away, because trying meant digging. It meant unpacking the rot underneath everything we'd buried. It meant asking questions we didn't really want answers to. "Yes," I said finally. She turned. Her face was unreadable. "But not like before," I added. "Not out of obligation. If we're going to do this, it has to be real, or not at all." She nodded slowly. "Okay." We didn't hug. We didn't fall into each other's arms. We didn't pretend things were fixed. We just stood in the same space with a fragile kind of understanding that felt more honest than anything we'd shared in months. Later that night, I sat alone on the couch while she took a shower. The silence was still there, but it wasn't heavy this time. I scrolled through my phone, thumb hovering over a name I hadn't saved but knew by heart. I didn't call. I didn't text. What I had with her wasn't sustainable. It wasn't built for the daylight. It was a collision, not a commitment. But it had shown me something I couldn't ignore. That I had been sleepwalking through my life. That I had settled for quiet decay over difficult truth. That I still needed to feel seen, and I had no right to expect that from someone I barely looked at anymore. The next morning, I woke before my wife. I made coffee for both of us, left it on the nightstand. When she came out of the room later, she looked surprised but didn't say anything. We sat on the couch and watched the news without speaking. But the silence was different now. Not warm, not yet, but no longer cold. The woman from the hotel never contacted me. I never went back. I didn't need to. What needed to happen had already happened. Sometimes, it's not the affair itself that changes you. It's the moment before, when you realize you've already emotionally left, and the body just catches up later. Sometimes, it's a stranger's touch that reminds you you've been starving for years. Not for sex, but for sincerity. For someone to look at you and not see the version you present to survive, but the one you forgot you used to be. I don't know what my marriage will become. I don't know if we'll make it, or if we'll eventually walk away. But for the first time, I'm willing to stop pretending. To ask harder questions. To have harder conversations. And maybe that's the first real step. I didn't go to that hotel to cheat. I went to disappear. And instead, I got seen. Sometimes that's the bigger betrayal. And sometimes, it's the beginning of something honest.